History isn't just about faded records and ancient artefacts. It's the story of how we all got to where we are today. And when it comes to Freemasonry, that story is huge. Freemasons have supported communities, upheld traditions, and been involved in key moments in history. Today, we're going to explore that history with someone who knows it much better than we do. Worshipful Brother Tony Howes, Provincial Historian of the Province of Essex. We'll be uncovering stories and looking into how traditions connect to the past. If you've ever wondered just how deep the roots of Freemasonry go, you're in for a fantastic conversation. My name is Sam, and I am joined by Paul. How are you, Paul?
I'm good, thanks, Sam. How are you?
Yes, very good, very good. Have you been up to anything recently?
No, not really. I'm very much looking forward to Burns Night coming up.
What lodge are you going to?
Well, there's many Burns Nights, but controversially, there is just one that is the best, which is Sibelius.
Sibelius, meeting at Hutton.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great food, great haggis, and most importantly, great company.
So Burns Night, for those who don't know, is an event that if you are a Freemason, you definitely should try and go to. It happens in January.
Well, it's to celebrate Robbie Burns, who was a famous Freemason.
Exactly. And a figure from history.
Yeah.
Boom. We have a link.
Which is a great segue into today's episode.
Wonderful. So yes, as ever, we like to start off with a meaningful quote, something that, gets the brain matter working. And I've got the perfect one here. It's by Theodore Roosevelt, who was obviously an American US president, the 26th president of the United States, and a Freemason. And he said, "We must learn from the past, act in the present, and build for the future." What do you think of that one, Paul?
It's definitely one of your best.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So, to help us unpack all this history, I'm joined by Worshipful Brother Tony Howes. As the Provincial Historian for Essex Freemasons, he enjoys researching, uncovering and preserving the stories of our Masonic past, from the earliest lodges in Essex to the role of individual Freemasons in historic events. Tony has a wealth of knowledge to share. So, let's get started. So welcome, Tony. How are you today?
Thank you, Sam and Paul. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm very well, and that was a marvellous introduction, and it took me straight into one of my two favourite presidents of the United States. It was Harry Truman, who followed on from Franklin D. Roosevelt, actually.
Right.
He was a fantastic Freemason, totally dedicated, and despite all his achievements, because he helped establish the United Nations, he ended racial segregation in the US Armed Forces. But despite all of these and everything that he did, he often said after he'd been president, "The greatest honour that has ever come to me in my life is to be the Grand Master of Masons in Missouri."
Wow.
He also
What a
said,
record.
yeah, it's a brilliant one, but how about this? He also said, "Three things can ruin a man: power, money, and women." I never wanted power. I never had any money. And the only woman in my life is up at the house right now. So thanks for that introduction.
Wonderful.
It took me back to that. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Oh, bang, straight into it, straight away. Wonderful. First of all, let's go right back into yourself. Why are you so interested in history when it comes to Freemasonry?
I've always been interested, to be truthful with you, in history. Not the way they teach it in schools, where they give you lots and lots of facts and dates. They only give you that facts and information that you can be tested on. And I was never very, very good at that. But I did love reading Caesar and Virgil and Tacitus. And Tacitus, I think, was one of the world's finest historians. And, as Tiberius famously said, I thought I was doing a good job until I came under the pen of Tacitus. So history, for the most part, it's true, or it should be true. And I enjoy history. How I came into it with the province is that I had spent 4 years on the provincial communications team, and I had got a grasp of what was happening, and I could see there was a gap there. The history needed to be carefully looked at and brought to life to the modern audience in the modern day. There's so much in Essex associated with the history of Freemasonry, but very little of it is ever spoken about or given to the members. So I thought it'd be nice to try and look in more deeply and do that.
It's one of the key reasons why a lot of people join Freemasonry, isn't it? The historical aspect.
Oh, it's amazing, because if you go to a white table evening and you're sitting with people who aren't in Freemasonry and you just tell them one or two of the tales and the stories of the history of Freemasonry, they're totally hooked, they're enamoured.
A white table meeting is a meeting where anyone can turn up, whether it's Freemasons or non-Freemasons.
Yes,
isn't it?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's all very good, but it's got roots that go back a long way, and it's a lovely journey from then to now, and Essex figures very much in that journey.
So why do you think it is important for modern Freemasons to understand the historical roots?
Well, the best way of learning what Freemasonry is and how to be a good Freemason is to go back to the early originals who set up Freemasonry and how it came about. And there's lots of fine traditions in Freemasonry. They're fantastic for a historian to write about. The traditions provide a skeleton, and all I have to do is find the meat on the bones as the historian.
So where was Freemason started? I know that's a bit controversial. They believe it's in Scotland, right? Or was it England?
Well, it was everywhere, really, because Mozart was he was initiated in Austria in the mid-18th century. So there was obviously a history of Freemasonry in Austria. But you've got to go right back to the old early days across Europe, I think, really, or the known world. If you were a baker or a blacksmith or a land worker, say in the Middle Ages, you just lived and stayed in your village. You didn't really move or travel around. But there were lots of castles and cathedrals being built, and the stonemasons, when the job had been done, they had to move on and find work somewhere else. So it's a bit like today you might say, well, you've got the high-speed link between London and Birmingham, and that's nearly completed. So the people who are working on that, they're no longer needed, and they've got to go and look at the new runway at Heathrow Airport or something. So it's that type of thing in modern day. So the castles and cathedrals needed building, and the stonemasons had to travel, but they didn't have qualifications that were written in those days. And so when they moved, say, from Edinburgh to Lancaster or York or wherever, they needed signs and proof of knowledge. And that's how the handshakes and the passwords came in place to show the level of experience. And that was good up until the end of the Middle Ages, but then the Reformation came. And then the church, the Catholic Church, lost its control. So there wasn't much more demand for cathedrals anymore. The nobility sort of took over the running of the land, and they didn't really need castles so much. They wanted stately homes and mansions. So the Masons, who had sort of formed lodges, they tried to get the nobility to come and be members. And especially in Scotland, a lot of sort of local aristocracy would come and join and be members, and so that they sort of wined and dined them to get work from them. You know, there's no such thing as a free lunch, but they liked the principles of stonemasonry, and then they gradually took over from the operative masons, and they became what was known as accepted masons, and they used the structure of lodges. They used the ancient charges. They used all the things that the stonemasons had used as a way of putting together a system of morality, which tied in with the age of the Enlightenment and allowed people to think way beyond their own circle There had been, in those days, fights between the Catholics and the Protestants, and they wanted to put a society together that wasn't at all religious, had nothing to do with religion. But everybody had a god, they thought, in those days, and that's why they insisted on having a supreme being. So it was for everybody, and you've only got to go forward a couple of hundred years from the formation of the Grand Lodge, and you've got people like Kipling, he was initiated into his lodge in Lahore in India, in Pakistan now, but it was in India in those days. And he was initiated by a Hindu. He was passed by a Muslim. He was raised, or his third degree, he was raised by a Christian, and the tiler was a Jew. The locals used to call that building the House of Magic because people of all denominations used to go there, and they were happy and got on really well together. It's so magical. It just didn't happen outside. And that's what Freemasonry is all about.
That's genuinely beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah,
To be perfect.
absolutely.
It really, honestly is. How about in Essex?
There's some marvellous people in Essex who contributed to the beginning of Freemasonry. But there were 5 men in 1735 who met in Colchester, and the very first lodge that formed in Essex was Angel Lodge. And Angel Lodge has a tremendous history. It also sponsored, if you like, the very first chapter in Essex, a Royal Arch chapter. And that came about because during the Napoleonic Wars and the wars with France, Nelson had his famous battle at Trafalgar, which really it stopped Napoleon from getting control of the seas. It was so important for Britain. Anyway, Nelson was mortally wounded at that battle. The members of Angel Lodge were so taken by this that within 2 months of that battle, they had agreed to raise a sum of money, £20, amongst themselves, which is a lot of money in 1805, and send it to the Patriotic Fund, which had been set up by Lloyd's of London for survivors and descendants and those injured in the Napoleonic Wars. And that's how the name Patriotic came for the Royal Arch chapter that was sponsored by Angel Lodge. Another person I like is a family that comes from Colchester, the Turner family. Turner began work at Essex Hall, which was originally known, this is John Turner in 1864, he began work at Essex Hall, originally known as the Eastern Counties Asylum for Idiots. And he studied and worked through the ranks, and in 1905, when he retired, he was the medical superintendent of a greatly enlarged Essex Hall, which had a 32-acre farm, a seaside home in Clacton, and workshops, and they produced about 30,000 items a year, including pots of jam and things like that. Now, John Turner was succeeded by his son, Dr. Frank Douglas Turner, who was born in 1871. He got his degree in London, did general practice in Huddersfield, but became his father's assistant at the Royal Eastern Counties Institution, which became known as the Eastern Counties Asylum for Idiots, Imbeciles and the Feeble-Minded residing in Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk and Cambridge. But it became known, in the end, Dr. Turner wanted to have a village community, and it became known as Turner Village. He turned it into Turner Village. And it became Turner Village in 1934, funded by 4 counties, and he was given the CBE by the King in 1942 for his work in the field of mental disorders. But whilst he was doing everything that he did for the medical profession, he was also the Grand Superintendent of Essex Royal Arch Masons. Right. So he had worked his way right up to the top. It's just amazing that we've got somebody who influenced the world of people with mental illness.
In this very short conversation we've had so far, you are very knowledgeable.
Oh, no.
Just flowing out. So let's just open it up. So what is the most interesting discoveries you've made?
Well, yes, there are, but I think I can kill one myth in that people say that Elias Ashmole was the first person to be initiated in England, in Warrington in 1646. But actually 5 years earlier than that, in 1641, Sir Robert Moray was actually the first recorded initiation into Freemasonry on English soil. But he was Scottish, and it was into the Lodge of Edinburgh, and they were at the siege of Newcastle, and he was the Quartermaster General at the siege of Newcastle, and they joined Freemasonry, so his lodge came down from Edinburgh in the middle of the siege and initiated him. but
No pressure.
No pressure. But he founded the Royal Society.
So you've come today, and people at home won't obviously be able to see this, and you've brought a lot of interesting books. There is a book in front of you that is catching my eye, and I'll tell you for why. It's called The Freemason's Bedside Book.
Oh,
well, what I like is you have markers in it. Now, my books, the interesting ones, I put markers in.
Yes.
So tell me about that book.
Right. I mean, there's two things that I enjoy a good read of a night before I go to bed, and wife sits in one room and I sit in another room. we have our little read. But yes, I mean, I enjoy also classical music because it sends me to sleep. Mozart, I mean, to me, he is the master, and Mozart and Haydn were in the same lodge together. Right. It's incredible. Yeah. But Rudyard Kipling, he wrote A Mother Lodge. Rudyard Kipling, I think, the most influential Freemason of all time, and I'll go to explain why in a minute. The first marker is at the Mother Lodge, and where he's talking about Freemasonry in the armed forces. And he says, outside the lodge, it's Sergeant, Sir, salute, salam. Inside, brother, and it doesn't do no harm. We met upon the level, and we parted on the square, and I was junior deacon in my mother lodge out there. I mean,
it's nice.
Now, that sums it up. It goes back to the original, what I was talking about earlier. It cuts across race and religion as well. Yeah, so that's, if you like, the beginning of it. He goes on to the Tyler's Toast, and he gives the full 6 verses of the Tyler's Toast. And, of course, the last verse everybody knows, but very few people know all the preceding 5. Dear brethren of the mystic tie, the night is waning fast. Our duty's done, our feast is o'er, this song must be our last. Good night, good night. Once more repeat the farewell strain. Happy to meet, sorry to part, and happy to meet again. Now, that was composed by Captain D.L. Richardson in 1860, who was an officer in the army in India.
So you know where it comes from.
Yeah.
So for people out there who don't know, the Tyler's Toast is done at the end of the festive board, which is the meal after a meeting.
It's always our last one.
It's our last toast. There's lots of toasts that go on, and it's our last one. And it's something that we all look forward to, not because it's the end, because it's beautiful. The words are beautiful, and we all join in, as we just did there. It's what Freemasonry is about.
And that's where it came from. So it came from the Indian Army. There's a good description of how Freemasonry affected and took part and helped defeat racism, if you like, in the Indian Army. And then there's Rudyard Kipling on the scene, cementing it all together. But another very close friend of Rudyard Kipling was Baden-Powell. They were very close friends. And when you look at how scouting is based on the scouting handshake, the scouting signs, the scouting salute, respect for other people, helping other people, it is a miniature version of what Freemasonry is all about. Where did Baden-Powell get that from? Yeah. Kim, The Jungle Book, and his lifelong friendship with Rudyard Kipling. So I think Rudyard Kipling had a tremendous influence on so many things. And the other page I've got marked is what did Elias Ashmole really say in his diary, because it spells out exactly what he wrote about when he was initiated on the 16th of October, 1646. And it says, I was made a Freemason at Warrington in Lancashire with Colonel Henry Mannering.
My man from Dad's army.
Well, and then he gives the names of those who were in the lodge, and there were 7 of them, and they say, well, 7 made a perfect lodge. And it was interesting because Ashmole was, at the time, had been a captain as a royalist, and Colonel Henry Mannering, he was on the parliamentarian side.
Oh, wow, again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That brotherly love across divides.
It just cuts across everything, doesn't it? Yeah, it really is, yeah.
Honestly, Tony, it has been a pure pleasure.
Absolutely.
Your passion, it isn't just your knowledge, it's the passion of which you deliver it, it's the passion in which you feel it. I can really feel that. It's genuinely beautiful. And so thank you. Honestly, thank you for everything you do, not just for this podcast, but for the actual work of keeping Freemasonry recorded.
Absolutely.
My pleasure, and thank you for inviting me, and it's been a real pleasure and a privilege and an honour to be here.
Well, it's not quite over yet, Tony, because we have, at the end of every podcast, we have Sam's final thought.
Oh, right.
Right. Which Paul absolutely loves. He loves my little sentimental moments.
I think you can hear my eyes roll half the time.
Right.
So history isn't just about the past. It's about understanding who we are today. Freemasonry has played a vital role in shaping communities, influencing key moments in history, and carrying forward traditions that still matter. As Freemasons, we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. Their legacy is our foundation. And by learning from our past, we strengthen our future. So next time you meet with your lodge or pass a Masonic centre, take a moment to reflect on the influence the past has on us today and the role each of us play in shaping what comes next.
Very well said. Yes.
That is actually quite good.
You like that one, Paul? Oh, that's the first one he's ever liked.
Really good.